Nearly a dozen plows lined up at the curb engines, growling, dumping load after load of dirty snow straight into my drain. I ran outside as the beepers screamed in reverse. No one slowed. Salt burned my nose while gray slush packed down, sealing the grate like concrete. Then the ground answered back. Glup. A pause. Glup again, deeper this time. I yanked the cover. Water surged up, swirled, and stopped dead. Trapped. I called the HOA president and told her trucks were blocking my storm drain. She didn't argue. She didn't deny it. That's not our problem, she said. It's your property. By afternoon, the temperature rose. The snow sagged. The drain groaned. And when I walked past the HOA road, I noticed a thin crack running straight down the asphalt, fresh, jagged, spreading. I took one photo, because if they kept dumping snow, I knew exactly where the pressure was going next. Elaine Caro didn't ask questions. She gave orders. I watched her step out of a bright red luxury coupe, the paint so glossy it looked wet against the snow heels crunching over frozen slush. She pointed straight at my curb. "Keep dumping there," she told the drivers. "Pack it tight." Nearly a dozen plows obeyed without hesitation, backing up in sequence like this had been rehearsed. The drain vanished under gray snow and salt while she stood there, arms folded, filming on her phone. I walked up and asked her calmly to stop. She didn't look surprised. She looked prepared. "That drain is causing a hazard," she said. "You're responsible for mitigating it." One sentence, flat, final. She slapped a bright orange notice on my door before I could respond. "Stormwater violation. Daily fines apply." Across the street, a tow truck idled with its hook, already lowered engine humming like it was waiting for permission. I asked for the written order authorizing her crews to dump snow into my system. Elaine smiled, once the kind that never reaches the eyes. "HOA operations aren't required to explain themselves to individual owners," she said. That was her entitlement, delivered clean and unapologetic. Her motive came next, just as brief. "That road has to stay clear. There's a project coming through." Then she turned back toward the red car, waved the next plow forward, and let the engines drown out everything else. As the snow piled higher, I realized something important. Elaine wasn't trying to bully me into compliance. She was trying to force a failure and make it look like it was mine. The plows came back the next morning in formation. Not one, not two. 9 of them staggered along the curb beepers, screaming as they reversed in sequence. Each blade dropped its load, salt, sand, ice chunks, straight into the mouth of my storm drain. This wasn't snow removal anymore. It was disposal. I filmed everything. Truck numbers, plates. The exact moment the blade tipped and gray sludge poured down like wet cement. One driver finally looked at me, shrugged, and rolled on. When they cleared out, I did the only thing I could do without making it worse. I grabbed a shovel and opened the grate. The drain coughed once. Water surged, swirled, then stopped dead. That sound came back, glup, glup, slow and hollow, like the pipe was trying to breathe through a blocked throat. I slammed the grate shut and looked up to see Elaine Caro across the street, leaning against her bright red coupe, phone raised. She didn't pretend this was accidental. She wanted the footage. By afternoon, my "no dumping" private drain sign was gone. The post was snapped clean. I found the sign later cracked and tossed behind the community mailbox. As the temperature nudged above, freezing the pile sagged. Meltwater ran down the curb and refroze into a slick ribbon. A delivery guy slid caught himself and stared at me like I'd created the hazard myself. I salted my own walkway. I wasn't giving them a real injury to point at. At 6:07 p.m., a bright orange notice hit my door. Stormwater violation. Correct within 24 hours or face daily penalties. Before I even stepped back inside, my phone buzzed with an HOA blast email. Subject: resident caused drainage hazard. My address was listed first. I looked back at the curb. The snow pile hadn't moved. And from beneath it, the drain made that sound again, quiet, steady, waiting. The next day, the system arrived with clipboards. 2 HOA compliance reps walked my frontage like a crime scene. One took photos. The other sprayed neon paint dots on my fence posts and curb edge marking boundaries without asking. "Don't touch those," one of them said when I stepped closer. "Get off my property," I replied. He pointed at the street. "HOA operations." That word again. Operations. Like they were an authority and I was a variable. I asked what exactly I was being fined for. He handed me a printed sheet with a number that landed heavy, $1,600 per day, accumulating until corrected. Beneath it, the real threat: lien eligible. A tow truck cruised past, slow hook rattling. It didn't stop. It didn't need to. I went straight to the HOA office by the pool house and asked for the written order authorizing snow dumping into my system. The receptionist stiffened like I'd said something forbidden. "You'll need a formal records request," she said, "for dumping snow, for all board-directed actions." I let that hang there. Board-directed. So it wasn't a rogue driver. It was policy. That night, sleep came in pieces. Every time I drifted off, I heard the pipe glup, pause, glup, and pictured water backing up under my driveway, under my foundation, under anything the HOA could later blame on me. In the morning, I logged into the city's stormwater portal and searched my address. A new complaint sat at the top of the list, filed 2 days earlier. Not by a neighbor, by a community representative. I printed the complaint and drove to the city office. The clerk pulled it up and frowned. "This isn't written like a homeowner report," she said. "It's technical." "Technical how?" She tapped the screen. "It requests rerouting. Like someone wants your drain treated as a collection point." My stomach tightened. A collection point for what? She didn't answer. She didn't have to. My phone rang as I walked back to the car. Elaine didn't bother with a greeting. "We're not stopping the plows," she said. "You're dumping into my storm drain," I replied. "It's choking." "That's your system," she said. "Your property." There was a smile in her voice, the same one she wore when she filmed. She wasn't guessing. She was executing a plan. When I got home, the compliance guys were back this time with a measuring wheel, pacing the curb like they were mapping future ownership. I filmed them too. At that point, I understood this wasn't a shovel fight. It was a paper fight. Whoever controlled the record would control the blame. Late afternoon, the fear finally landed. Not panic, not anger. The quiet kind. If they stuck me with a lien, my credit would crater. If my credit cratered, I'd lose the refinance I was already counting on to survive winter bills. And all the while, fines would stack daily, bleeding me dry without ever stepping inside a courtroom. I walked down to the HOA road and knelt by the seam in the asphalt. The hairline crack was still there, only now it was longer, thin, jagged, stretching as if something underneath was being pulled apart. I took another photo, zoomed in, and saved it with a timestamp. Behind me, engines growled. I turned to see the plows lining up again, 9 of them, beepers, rising blades angled, ready to dump another round into the same spot. And that's when it clicked. Elaine wasn't trying to make my drain fail. She was setting the stage for something much bigger. I didn't confront Elaine again. I didn't clear the drain. I didn't touch the snow. Instead, I started building a record. I pulled every time-stamped clip from my cameras, each plow reversing each blade, tipping each load dumped straight into the drain. I logged dates, temperatures, melt rates. I photographed the curb, the grate, the pooled water that had nowhere to go. Then I called a licensed civil tech I'd worked with years ago and asked him to come look quietly. He didn't bring tools. He didn't need them. He crouched by the grate, ran a gloved finger through the slush, and listened. After a minute, he stood and said the sentence that finally framed everything. "This isn't a clogged drain," he said. "This is deliberate obstruction." I asked him what happens next. He looked down the street toward the HOA road, then back at me. Pressure finds the weakest point, and it's almost never where the water starts. That afternoon, I filed a formal complaint with the city stormwater office, short, factual, documented. No accusations, just evidence. I included a single question at the end. Who authorized snow disposal into a private storm drain? The reply didn't come right away, but something else did. A city inspector drove through the neighborhood just before dusk. He didn't stop at my house. He slowed at the HOA road, rolled past the seam in the asphalt, then slowed again. His brake lights glowed red longer than necessary. That night, the temperature dropped fast. Meltwater refroze inside the pipe. The sound changed, no longer a hollow gulp, but a deeper creak, like something being stretched beyond tolerance. At 1:03 p.m., I got an email from the HOA. Subject: emergency board meeting. Mandatory attendance. The body was short. They were escalating. Fines would continue. Non-compliance would be addressed with law enforcement present if necessary. I didn't reply. I set another camera angle instead. The next morning, the crack in the HOA road had grown teeth. It wasn't wide. Not yet. But it was longer, running a clean line across the lane, branching at the edges like stress fractures in glass. Cars slowed over it. Tires made a new sound, passing across sharp, brittle. Elaine sent another blast email, blaming ongoing homeowner negligence for structural risk. She attached a grainy photo of standing water near my curb and circled it in red like she'd solved the case. What she didn't attach were my videos. By noon, the city stormwater supervisor called me back. "We're opening an investigation," he said. Do not alter the site. I told him I hadn't touched anything in days. Good, he replied, because if what you sent us is accurate, this isn't a code issue. It's negligence. At 3:17 p.m., a contractor truck pulled up to the HOA road, not to fix it but to measure. They chalked marks near the crack, talked quietly, then left. No cones, no barriers, no repair. At 5:00 p.m., Elaine knocked on my door for the first time since this started. She didn't bring paperwork. She didn't bring witnesses. She brought urgency. You need to sign a responsibility acknowledgement, she said, holding out a single page. Tonight, I scanned it. It admitted fault for drain failure impacting community infrastructure. I handed it back. I didn't cause this, I said. Her jaw tightened. If you don't sign, this becomes criminal. I didn't argue. I didn't explain. I just closed the door. At 6:42 p.m., the temperature rose again. Just enough. Water started moving where it hadn't been able to move all week. Inside, the pipe pressure built behind ice salt and compacted debris that didn't belong there. I stood at my window and listened. The sound came back, gloop, then a sharp crack from down the block. Not loud, not dramatic, just wrong. My phone lit up with messages from neighbors. Did you hear that? The road just shifted. Something's leaking near the bend. I didn't respond. At 7:05 p.m., headlights washed over the crack. A car slowed, then stopped. The driver backed up, fast tires chirping. At 7:11 p.m., Elaine's red coupe screeched to a halt by the HOA road. She stepped out, heels slipping, phone already raised. And right then, right as she started talking into it, the asphalt dipped. Not collapsed. Not yet. Just enough to prove what everyone had been ignoring. The emergency meeting was scheduled for 7:30. By the time people gathered, the ground underneath them was already deciding what came next. The emergency meeting started late and loud. Chairs scraped. People stood along the walls. Elaine Caro took the front like she still owned the room, red coat draped over the back of her chair, phone face down but close enough to grab. She opened by pointing at me. This situation, she said, voice sharp, was caused by a homeowner who refused to maintain his drainage system, creating a public safety risk. Murmurs rippled. Someone shouted that they couldn't get their car out. Another said a delivery truck had turned around. Elaine raised a hand for silence and slid a single sheet across the table toward me. Sign this, she said. Acknowledge responsibility, and we end this tonight. Before I could answer, the doors at the back opened. A city stormwater supervisor walked in with a clipboard, followed by a code officer and a utility engineer. They didn't ask permission. They didn't look at Elaine. We're stopping this meeting, the supervisor said. Everyone needs to step outside. Now, Elaine stood. You can't just deep pop cut through the room. Not from inside. From the street. The sound of something under tension, finally giving up. Outside, floodlights washed over the HOA road. The crack I'd been photographing all week had opened into a shallow depression, asphalt sagging like wet cardboard. Water seeped through the seams, dark and steady. The supervisor turned to Elaine. Who authorized snow dumping into the private storm drain uphill? Elaine didn't answer. She looked at me. I didn't speak either. I handed the supervisor my phone. He scrolled once, twice, watched 9 plows reverse in sequence. Watched blade after blade dump snow, salt, and ice directly into the drain. He paused on the timestamp, then on the license numbers. The utility engineer knelt, pressed a boot near the dip, and shook his head. Obstruction froze inside the pipe. Meltwater had nowhere to go. Pressure traveled downstream to where someone asked. He pointed at the road. Here. Elaine stepped back. This is being misinterpreted. The homeowner's drain failed. The supervisor cut her off. Your office filed a rerouting request to use that drain as a collection point. No permit, no approval. Silence hit hard. The supervisor turned to the crowd. This wasn't a maintenance issue. This was deliberate redirection. Elaine's composure cracked. That road had to stay open, she snapped. We had no choice. The words hung there, clean, clear, and recorded by half the phones in the crowd. The supervisor nodded once to the code officer. That's an admission. A deputy who'd been standing back stepped forward. Miss Caro, you're interfering with an active investigation. I'm going to need you to put your phone down. She didn't. She started arguing louder now, blaming contractors, blaming residents, blaming anyone within arm's reach. Behind her, the asphalt dropped another inch. Not a collapse. A confirmation. The utility engineer raised his voice. Everyone back. This section is unstable. Elaine turned just in time to see the road sag again, water pulsing up through the crack like a heartbeat. Her face drained of color. The deputy took her arm. For obstruction and endangerment, he said, cuffing her in front of the crowd. No one cheered. No one needed to. The road had spoken louder than any of us ever could. We ended up back at my house because there was nowhere else to stand. The clubhouse was taped off, the road was blocked, and people followed the only open path without being told. Neighbors filled my living room in winter coats, quiet in a way I'd never seen before. No gossip, no side conversations, just the low hum of shock settling in. A couple of people avoided my eyes at first, then didn't. One man cleared his throat and said I should have spoken up earlier. Another nodded and added, "She did this kind of thing to us too, just not this big." I felt the tension drain out of my shoulders as if the house itself had exhaled. For the first time in weeks, I wasn't listening for engines or beepers. I wasn't bracing for another notice on the door. I was just standing there barefoot on my own floor, while the neighborhood recalibrated around a truth no one could unsee. Someone knocked, then stepped inside with a folded petition already half signed, asking if I'd be willing to testify if it came to that. I said yes once, and the word felt lighter than it had any right to. My phone went on speaker and stayed there. First was my attorney, calm and precise. All fines were frozen, effective immediately. Any lien action was voided pending investigation. Then an email notification chimed, followed by another, the city's PDF decision letter read aloud as it arrived. The Stormwater Office assumed control of the site. The HOA was formally designated responsible for the road failure and downstream damage. Any modification to drainage present or future would require third-party engineering review city permits and a community vote with recorded minutes. The code officer confirmed the same in person, stating it plainly so everyone could hear the obstruction was documented as deliberate and liability sat with the HOA. Finally, a brief call from the county's fraud unit. Financial records and vendor contracts were being seized under warrant due to conflicts of interest tied to the incident. No speeches, no theatrics. Just consequences arriving through official channels one after another in real time, stacking like bricks until the shape of the outcome was unmistakable. Near sunset, the interim board rep knocked and handed me a letter, an apology drafted by council, acknowledgement of fault, and a commitment to restitution for all affected residents. They asked if I wanted to say anything. I walked them to the window instead. Outside, city crews ringed the sagging asphalt with cones stamped HOA liability, the words catching the light as if someone had underlined the lesson. I stepped out, crossed my own curb, and replaced the drain cover with a new grate, bolting it down until it rang solid. The water moved cleanly, then no gulping, no strain, just flow. When I came back in, the cameras were still running, but they didn't feel like shields anymore. They felt unnecessary. The house was quiet. The neighborhood was quieter. And for the first time since the plows lined up, the pressure had somewhere else to go. Boundaries only fail when the people crossing them think no one will notice.